Why you need boundaries and how to set them. In today's episode, I'm very excited about. You're going to learn the different reasons why that you need boundaries, which might help you go through this process of learning. And you're going to learn about the signs that you have poor boundaries. And then you're going to learn about the 7 different types of boundaries you need to be aware of. And you'll learn about a 4-step simple process when you are becoming a boundary conscious person. So there are many reasons why that we need to have boundaries. And the very first one is that we're humans. We have our limits. And that's what boundaries means. It is the limit. It is what we decide, what we're going to tolerate, what we're okay with, and what we're not okay with. And what's even more important than, why I need boundaries, it's for you to ask yourself this question. Why do I need healthy boundaries? Right? What has been happening with me maybe having poor boundaries or rigid boundaries? Because there are both extremes. I need boundaries. It's because it's self-love, self-care, self-respect in action. And I need to have boundaries is because I want healthy relationships. And all healthy relationships, the basic building block are healthy boundaries. It's going to require the both of us understand ourselves, what are boundaries, for us to communicate, set and maintain our boundaries, and for us to respect each other's limits too. And we want to have boundaries because we don't want to experience the consequences of us having poor boundaries, or us having boundaries but to have them be violated, walked all over, right? Manipulation. So here are some of the signs if you have poor boundaries or rigid boundaries. The first sign is resentment. You're going to feel resentful towards other people if you always say yes and you can't say no, right? And for me, resentment now is a sign if I've overstayed. So for me, I'm also working through all this stuff in my relationships. So for me, I don't drink, but I do like to go out sometimes if there's good music, with good company. But for me, I'm still getting good at leaving when I want to, when it's the right time for me. So I will notice that I start to feel resentful if I wanted to leave and I haven't left yet, right? The resentment is going to build, right? So if I start to get tired or the party's kind of boring, right? Or I just want to go, I don't want to be there anymore, right? And I stay. The resentment's going to build. And that is a sign for me when I am not respecting my own limits. Another sign is exhaustion and even burnout, right? Because when we don't manage our time, our energy, and we're saying yes way too much, right? We're going to become exhausted. We're going to even burn out, right? If you can't say no when it comes to work, family, favors, responsibilities, right? And even if you're doing good things like helping out in your community, you will exhaust and burn yourself out if you're not able to say no and set boundaries when we need to, and even when we just want to. And also our boundary challenges can go the other extreme. So we could be too rigid with our boundaries, too harsh, too black and white. Maybe some of us are always saying no and not saying yes enough. And some signs is you're going to find yourself isolating. You might be finding yourself limited relationships or superficial relationships. Or if you are a professional, you might not have deep relationships outside of the work setting. And even in the workplace, you might find yourself, it's hard for you to connect with other people in your job. Another sign that you need boundaries and they're missing in your life is if you're a perfectionist, a high achiever, right? You maybe overwork yourself, right? And you're unable to say no to extra work, right? Jumping to the next thing very quickly when you might want to take some time to recenter. And even when it comes to boundaries, which we'll talk more about, the 7 types of boundaries, we need inner personal boundaries, right, for ourselves, right? And part of being a perfectionist, a high achiever, and I'm recovering from this, is that inner critic, right? Being able to be like, this is enough. I am not going to beat myself up and criticize myself anymore for making a mistake, for not being perfect, for getting some critical but good feedback, right? I had enough. No, that's enough. Being able to have those inner personal boundaries too. And please, I would love to hear from you. Share in the comments. What are some signs that have been coming up for you that you need to start setting and maintaining your boundaries? So many signs. The last one I'll offer you here today is feelings of frustration and irritation, right? Towards other people, right? You feel irritated. Oh, why are you asking me for this favor? You might be avoiding their text messages because you don't know how to handle when people ask you for stuff that you want to and you need to say no to. No, thank you. No, I can't help you right now. Have you tried? Okay. So there are different areas to consider when you are learning and understanding and getting ready to set and maintain your boundaries. And here are the 7 areas. There are your time boundaries. You have to be the timekeeper of your time. We have limited time here, right? We have physical boundaries, right? When people talk about our bodies, what they say, the comments, our personal space, right? How we like to be touched or not at all. Do we want a hug? No hugs? Handshake, right? Are you too close, right? Too far? We have sexual boundaries. You get to decide what you're okay with and what you're not okay with, what you're interested in and not interested in when it comes to sex. You have material boundaries. So your belongings, right? You get to decide if you're willing to lend this pen to someone else, right? How long they get to borrow it. What happens if they damage this pen, right? You can also include your money, right? Lending people money or not. What are the terms, the conditions, the interest rate? So belonging, material belonging, including money. And you have spiritual, religious boundaries, right? You can believe whatever you want, right? No one, well, people do, right? That's where your boundaries comes in, right? We can respect each other's beliefs and religions, right? We can learn to get along, right? If our favorite gods and goddesses and prophets and leaders were alive here today, if they're passed on, right? What would they say? Like, they probably will still love all humans regardless of their belief system, right? And the other 2 are tricky because they're invisible. Emotional boundaries and mental boundaries, right? Your feelings, they matter, right? You get to protect, you get to honor, acknowledge your feelings, right? And here are the boundary violations, right? When people dismiss your feelings, gaslight you, that's a big one, right? Emotionally abuse you, right? They manipulate you, right? That's no. And mental boundaries. You have a beautiful mind, right? Your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions, those are yours. And here is where a lot of emotionally immature people struggle with, especially parents. They don't know how to agree to disagree, right? It's always a fight, right? Always, it's my opinion over yours, right? Nah. And what really helped me when I was first learning about boundaries, even buying books and studying about boundaries back during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, a book recommendation. I think every episode I'll recommend you a book. I don't have the copy. It's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nidra Tawwab Glover. And this was the first book on boundaries I picked up. But I don't think it was from this boundary book that I got this tool. So imagine that boundaries is like a fence and a gate, and you are this house inside this fence and a gate. So there's a gate that can open and close. So you get to decide what you're okay with and not okay with, right? You get to decide what this gate opens to and what this gate doesn't allow in. So when it comes to our boundaries and our limits, you can think about this in terms of behavior, actions, words, right? What behavior will you tolerate and what you will not tolerate? What words you'll tolerate and what words you will not tolerate. So for me, I love coaching and empowering my students and my clients with this new skill of setting and maintaining and reinforcing their boundaries, but not just in any way. The way that I do it, the way that I coach, is in a way that is both assertive yet empathetic, both powerful and kind, right? Both clear and honest and respectful. There's many ways to set boundaries. This is the way that I stand by, and this is the way that really gets the best results. So one framework I teach my students is setting boundaries in 4 simple steps. So the first step is really, before you do anything, is getting clear. So maybe you can go through this exercise with me. So think about a person in your life who you could love, but also very challenging, or it could be a type of relationships with partners, with friends, with siblings, with boss. So either a specific person or a type of relationships. Okay? Got it? And now I want you to reflect on this relationship. So how I figure out whether or not I need to consider boundaries is going through these questions, right? What's happening that makes me feel uncomfortable, unseen, unheard, disrespected, ignored, hurt? So you can think about maybe what they're doing or not doing, what they're saying and not saying, right? So all of these things that you might unravel, you want them to go outside of the gate and the fence. But also, as you go through the step 1, getting clarity, ask yourself, right? What is happening that makes me feel comfortable, safe, seen, loved, respected, cared for? So that's step 1, getting clear, clarity. So step 2 is the hard part, and a lot of people, they don't realize that there's 2 more steps after step 2. So now is the communication, letting this other person know. So there's different ways to communicate through our body language, right? Through our words, so in person. But a lot of my students, when they first start working with me, they're not emotionally ready. Their nervous system is not ready yet to have these conversations in person, right? A lot of times my students are struggling with their partner, with their friends, with their boss, their manager, their parents, their siblings. So if you can't really do this in person, but also consider the other person, right? It's not just all about you. What might be a method of communication that is easy and effective for the both of us? So other ways to consider communication: texting, right? Messaging, voice notes, video call, phone call, email, pigeon mail. Got my pigeon right there, ready, ready. So step 2, you gotta communicate it, right? So some people don't even realize there's the communication part, right? Some of us here are like, they should just know, Kai. They should just know. Ah! Should they know? Where did you learn this from? So now that you went through the first 2 steps, step 3, you have to maintain your boundaries sometimes. People might test your boundaries sometimes. And it's not always done from an evil place, right? Especially if you're newly setting boundaries because you've been a people pleaser your whole life. You've been very rigid, really harsh all your whole life. So people that might really care about you, they might ask you questions because they kind of want to just know what you mean and where this line is so they can better respect it. So quite often, right, you might get scared. You might give up your boundaries if they ask you why, even though it's coming from a good place. Or if you're very defensive, rigid, and harsh, when they ask you why, you get very angry, right? So you have to also be aware of your own patterns and to realize that once you communicate it, boundaries is not one and done, right? There's the maintenance part, there's the reminding part, there's the back and forth conversation part, there's the multiple conversation part, and then the fourth and last step, this is the reinforcing, because sometimes people, they don't want to respect your boundaries, right? We'll cover this in another episode, the common negative reactions to your boundaries, right? They might gaslight you, silent treatment, guilt trip you, ask you questions, test your boundary, try to push through your boundaries, right? Play dumb. A lot of emotionally immature reactions, but do you know how to handle them, right? So step 4 is handling the reactions, right? Reinforcing your boundaries if you need to. And sometimes the last part is setting consequences. So consequences can be its own episode. It's not about punishment, but right, it's about what you're going to do if they continue to behave this way. So you're always in power of the consequence. So one quick example is like a lot of my students deal with yelling. So the boundary would be like, hey, I could tell, we're both getting heated. I hear that, I can tell that you feel like, I sense that you're upset, and I hear that, you're beginning to yell. I really don't like this, right? If we're going to have this conversation, I know it's hard, but we're going to need to speak about this more calmly. Like, how dare you tell me calm now? So, hey, I totally get it that you're upset, but if we can't talk calmly about this, I'm going to have to end the conversation for now, and we can revisit this later. How dare you, right? So, okay, so I gotta step away because I'm feeling scared, and I want to have this conversation with you. But if you can't calm down right now, that's not the best way to say it. If you can't lower your voice right now, I don't feel safe enough to have this conversation. I'm gonna have to step out. And then you have to act on it, right? So consequences is not about punishment, right? It's not getting them do this, do that. You have no power over that, right? It's what you can do. And I hope you act on it. And sometimes when you hit step 4 of this process of setting boundaries, right? Sometimes there are positive changes, right? And we go through different seasons, different things happen in life. So sometimes, we might renegotiate the limit, compromising, making exceptions. And sometimes, depending on the season, depending on the relationship, the person, right? Positive changes do happen when it comes to this boundary stuff. You might change your boundary. You might remove this limitation. And that is step 4. So now, Kai, how do we set boundaries? So many ways to do it, right? But it's really a new skill. It's like a new art. It's going to take practice. You're going to find your own way to do it. So literally, the simplest form of a boundary is no. No thanks. No, I'm not interested. No, this is not okay. Right? Physically, like physically removing yourself, right? Giving them like a face, like signaling, hey, like what's going on? Hey, nope, no thank you. Nope, this is not okay. Mm-mm. And some of you might have learned from books and people online that no is a complete sentence. Yes, although that is true. But when it comes to personal relationships, family relationships, especially if you're establishing boundaries with someone with a very anxious attachment style, with these people, it's not explaining, but it's just helping them understand why it's a no today, right? So it's not about explaining yourself or being apologetic, but it's about being understanding in your relationships that, hey, thank you for inviting me to hang out this weekend. It sounds very fun. I'm not available this weekend because I actually have other plans already, but I do want to spend time with you. Let's hang out next week. So that's when, don't just be like no is a complete sentence. That's too harsh. That could be too rigid. But with certain people, right? Yes, then no, right? Can be more of a complete sentence. And something for you to consider when you're setting boundaries, especially if this is new for you, no is only one side of the coin. Because when you say no, you're also saying yes to something else. So one way you can communicate your boundaries is 3 steps. The first step, can be starting with how you're feeling, sharing something vulnerable, right? Hey, can we talk about something? So I've been feeling very exhausted this week, and I know earlier this week I said yes to helping you move. So, you're kind of sharing something, and then this is you saying no. So I actually have decided I can't help you move tomorrow. So, right, you're kind of saying no, you're sharing, you're setting the limit, and don't just leave it there. Now share what the yes is, or what you want or need instead. And sometimes it's just for us to talk about it, right? Or come up with some ideas together. So the third part, right? So I can't help you move tomorrow. I'm sorry for saying yes, but I do need to just rest. But this weekend, if you still need help this weekend, I can help you then. I have 2 hours on Saturday if that works for you. So you see how sharing what's going on, saying no, and then also saying yes to something else. But before you do this, right, going back to step 1 of boundary setting, make sure you're clear and it's okay for you before you communicate this. So I hope this helps. A quick recap. We talked about here today why you need boundaries, signs that you need to have boundaries, or you currently have poor boundaries or too rigid of a boundaries. And please comment below, what are some signs that have been showing up in your life that you have been missing boundaries, right? You're too rigid, you're too people-pleasing with your boundaries. And then we talked about the 7 different types of boundaries. I shared with you in today's episode the 4 steps of setting, maintaining, reinforcing boundaries. And then just right before, I shared with you some of the how. How can you start setting your boundaries? I couldn't cover everything you need to know about boundaries in this one little video, but feel free to check out my course below where I guide you through this whole process of not just setting boundaries, but we didn't really get to talk about today, helping you navigate the difficult emotions that comes up as you even think about saying no, right? And how you manage and handle all the difficult emotions that comes up inside of you as you're communicating this, and also how to handle and deal with their emotions as you go through this process of creating, right, attracting, and maintaining healthier relationships in your life. If you found this helpful, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, so you can give me more energy to keep going. And it also lets me know that this is a topic that you care about and you want to learn more of. So I'll see you in the next episode.